There, yay. All right. Good evening, everyone. We have a special Parent Tech Talk tonight where we actually have our teen ambassadors from Paving the Way with us. So we have a couple high school and also college, age here. So we're going to have some really candid conversations around what it's like being a teenager today and what's like being, put in a pandemic and being pulled out of school and what social media and all of the things that they deal with on a daily basis are like. So let's get started. We have Jennifer, Aubrey, and Carly with us tonight. Thanks, ladies, for joining us. Oh, and Simone. Yay. Welcome, Simone. Great. All right. So let's get started. We'll go ahead and just go around and provide your guys' kind of response to our first question tonight, and we'll go from there. So obviously, we're here to let our parents know about the things that were going on. So what is something that you wish that your parents or other parents maybe would like, or that you would want them to understand about what it's like growing up as a child today? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
I would probably just say that there's like a lot of pressure with social media that I feel like they didn't really have to deal with. So we kind of have like a different perspective on stuff like that. Cause I know, like, for example, if somebody at my school like makes a mistake, instead of like when they were young, only the people at your school like know about it and only you have to deal with like the repercussions of it. But with like Snapchat and Instagram and all that, it's like the people at the school like 15 minutes down the road also find out about it. And then I feel like it's just a lot of pressure, like to always do the right thing, and then also just influence to not do it. Because, instead of just influence in person, you have to deal with it online too. So I feel like that's kind of like a double whammy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add on to that. I feel like it's like kind of like difficult for like parents sometimes to like understand that like it's not like only like you raising your kid, like it's like the whole world has like an impact on your kid, especially because of like social media and just like so many different things are like a part of our lives that like you said, like that parents didn't have back then. So just to like keep in mind that like your child isn't you, and that like sometimes parents like misunderstand that like you're not the only one, like the situations aren't the same. So I feel like just remembering that like social media and like other factors that we have that they didn't have also like impact your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Carly, you're a little bit older than the girls. What did you notice, when you were in school, and what do you see changing today?
Well, I wanted to hop in right after. I definitely want to tag on. The fear of failure is at an all-time high. It's not even if we move past the social media standpoint, we just talk about in our personal lives, the fear of failure is at an all-time high now because requirements are at an all-time high. So just because the requirements are high doesn't mean that you're going to, even if you feel like you match it, the requirements are like right here. And so when parents are saying, okay, well, you need to strive higher, well, where's the bar? Because there is no bar. And then we tag on with social media when everyone's living on cloud luxury and everything like that. It's so much harder now. People fear failure. And as a person like myself who went through the journey of finding which career is best for me and things like that, which college doesn't teach you, unfortunately, the fear of failure is at an all-time high. It's what's causing people who graduate to feel like their degrees are worthless, and the mental health and everything like that. It post grad mental health is really at an all-time high.
Interesting.
And I think I feel like everything you guys are saying I completely agree with. And we just have there's so much more that we're comparing ourselves to because we have such a there's just so much on social media, and social media is such a highlight reel as well that we're kind of just seeing the highlights of so many people's lives, and it's really easy to kind of get kind of forget that they're highlights and compare our lives to just the highlights of other people's lives. So I think it's really easy to be really hard on yourself and kind of forget that everybody has struggles and not everybody's perfect. And I think that for me personally definitely contributes to me having really high expectations for myself. And you really just got to check yourself sometimes on that.
Good point. Absolutely. So knowing that you guys have, a lot of stress on you, you guys deal with a lot of things day to day. No problem. All right. So knowing that you guys, deal with this high stress, not only in your guys' own lives, but the world around you is going through a lot of turmoil at the same time. Where is that safe space for you? Do you guys feel like within your home you have a safe space to be able to talk freely and candid and ask difficult questions? Is it with a different family member? Is it with an older friend? Like, explain like where you guys feel like safe being able to express yourselves. And Jennifer, let's just start with you and we'll just go.
I would probably say my mom is like a big part of that, but it also wasn't always like that. Like we used to not really have like a great relationship, but then it was like through uncomfortable conversations that we kind of like mended it, because we realized that a lot of it was just like misunderstanding. And I think that that's something that like the parent and the kid can both be too stubborn to like sit each other down and be like, this is uncomfortable, but let's talk about it. So yeah, I'd say my mom, my sister, she's like 4 years older than me. I'm really close with her. And then also, of course, like a couple close friends here and there. I feel like they've made like the biggest safe space to talk about. And most of it is just through like, I know I'm not going to be judged. Like I can go to them with certain things and I know that they're not going to be like, oh, well, you did this and this wrong. Like it's your fault. And they'll call me out if I'm wrong, of course. But like, I don't feel like I'm like judged in this situation. Whereas with other people, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to tell them that, because if I tell them that, they're going to look at me different. And then it's just going to be like a whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have I'm very fortunate to have like a small circle of very wise friends who are very good listeners and who give me like really good advice. Don't get me wrong, I love talking to my mom, but there's just some things that like you just want to tell your friends. And because they are basically family to me. So it's not like I'm like hiding anything from my parents, because it's still my family. But I feel like they just kind of like make me feel safe by like listening to what I have to say and valuing my opinions and my feelings, and really just making me feel like heard and like loved by them. And like Jennifer said, like I don't really feel judged by them when I like tell them things that are like important to me. So yeah.
I can agree with that. I also have friends that happen to be older, who've gone through a couple more experiences that I feel like were aligned to be in my life. For areas that I wasn't prepared for, they were prepared for, even though they're not that much older than I am. And I have great mentors that give it to me straight. It's no sugarcoating, anything like that. That really helps me along that journey.
I am really close with my parents, especially my dad. So I feel like I can really go to him with anything. And both of them for sure are just awesome support systems. And I also have a couple close friends. I just moved to Florida from Oregon, so most of my close friends live in Oregon still. But there's a little bit of a time change, but for the most part, I can call them whenever, and they 100% are there to support me. And I'm really grateful that I still have those connections, even though we're so far away now.
Okay. So it sounds like you guys all have, that safe space, things like that. What about your friends? Do you feel like your friends have that at home, like with their own parents? Can they have those difficult conversations? Do you feel like they might venture over to your home to talk to your parents more maybe than their own? Like what does that look like for them?
No, yeah, for sure. Like I got really lucky with my parents, and I know not everybody has that. And I've seen like a lot of times my parents will kind of be like surrogate parents for some of my friends. And so like they'll come over and they'll be like crying to my mom about like a boy issue that they have or something like that. So definitely like, and of course we're all super close with each other, because again, like Aubrey had mentioned, there's certain things that you just don't bring up to your parents. But yeah, definitely not everyone is lucky enough to have like what I have. So I'm definitely very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, I'm on like the same page as you. I'm very, very fortunate with my parents, and my friends totally agree. And a lot of the times, like they'll just like come over and just like it's like a whole therapy session. It's really, I'm glad that like my parents can be that person for them. But I'm also like really glad that like they also come to me as well. So I just feel like we both kind of like make each other feel safe, which is like really like strengthens our bond, So I just feel like it's it's like a good like circle. Like I go to them, they go to me, and it's really good.
I can also agree with that. Allowing your friends to have that safe space. I know some friends, when you tell certain friends certain things and then the other friends you don't tell. Well, I like my friends to be able to be 100% honest. So I ask those probing questions to get to the bottom of it, because oftentimes the healing process is a lot more difficult than the actual wound itself. So people are, quick to close in, even if that is their friends, because they have shame or guilt or anything like that. But I have a strong faith base. So I just kind of can tell when someone's hiding or holding back something. And within a couple of days or two, they usually bring it out and everything like that. So creating that safe space is also pushing people to be vulnerable. That's the only way you'll get that safe space, because a lot of times we do keep things for ourselves, even if we have close friends and stuff like that. So I believe that that safe space is only going to be accomplished when we're 100% open with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Sorry, my mom is she's somewhere and she doesn't know I'm on the call and she keeps texting, calling me. But I would say I have a couple most of my friends are pretty fortunate as I am and are pretty close with their parents. I've had a couple situations where my mom has definitely been there when they have come to her. But for the most part, I'd say most of my friends are pretty lucky to have pretty strong support systems around them, which I think is awesome. And I know I have gone to therapy myself, and then I have lots of friends who are also in therapy. So I know that they have that support as well, which I think is important.
Good. That's great. So let's talk about school. Let's talk about being out of school, being separated from friends and your normal routine, and missing graduation and school events and proms, things like that. That's just a normal childhood experience. Like what's that like? I didn't get yanked out of school for 2 years and how to do remote or anything like that. I have no idea what that would even feel like. At any age, being told that I had to stop being with my friends all day long and I had to go home and sit in my room or be in the house for 2 years. So like, what does that look like for you guys? And how do you feel mentally coming out of this?
Well, I know like I was a freshman when like my last normal year of high school was freshman year. And then we came back and I was a junior, and obviously we had masks and everything. And junior year, you have like the SAT, you have like all of your college prep and things like that. I literally had no idea what I was doing, because the courses, like the online courses we did over COVID, like they just were not very good. Like I feel like they just threw everything together. So like mental health wise, I definitely felt very isolated, especially like the further I got into it, because the beginning of the 2 years was fine. Like it was like, oh, like we get a nice little break. But then after the 2 years, it definitely was like, okay, like no one's really here to help me. I'm kind of on my own. And then we were just thrown back into school and just expected to like be fine with everything. So it definitely took a little bit of a toll. Things are getting better now because everything's like opening up. But it definitely was a lot of like, I feel like I have no guidance, like education wise. And we were just expected to go back to normal when we got back. And it was just not very well.
Yeah, I could totally agree with that. I am a junior this year. And so I did like remote school like all of last year. And it was definitely an adjustment. My brain felt so weak. Like I didn't really feel like I was learning anything. I didn't have like the social aspect of like people in school. Like you just don't see people, like physical people in front of you. Like I'm looking at a screen all day. And I feel like it was just so like draining. But like now that we're like out of that, like my brain feels like stronger. Like I feel like everything the past like 2 years that like we've like been through, I feel like I'm like ready. Like I feel like I've already been through it, right? But it's definitely hard because I met a lot of amazing seniors who have totally like just like made me so much like more mature and like everything. But now it's hard because they're all graduating and they're all going, but I still have like another year. So it's definitely like an adjustment to like see all of that happen for them. And like I'm still here. So it's definitely going to be an experience.
Well, speaking from previous college student, I didn't really have that many issues because I lived in a townhouse with three other roommates and stuff like that. I mean, it avoided the parking issues we had at UCF. Like the parking was just outrageous, so you didn't have to pay for parking, um, or free to stay home. What definitely had issues is because you're constantly by the same people all the time, and then people act different when they're in the house for too long, and then the issues and the tension rise and everything like that. You can't really escape because you live there. um Definitely it took a toll in trying to get in touch with different people and stuff like that, because usually the campus is huge and you meet different people anywhere you go, but when you're in a house secluded with the same four people all the time, and people are getting on each other's nerves over a toaster and things like that. But definitely I would say I didn't really have that much of a difficult time, honestly. It's just me.
Well, in my experience, I was also in my freshman year when COVID hit. And so the rest of my freshman year was online and it was a hot mess. I learned pretty much that whole second semester of math over Khan Academy because my teacher really was not teaching. And it was just really difficult. But at the time, it was definitely kind of a honeymoon phase. Everybody was excited. We were out of school. We didn't have much going on. And then next year, we were online for the entire year. But I started taking classes at a community college. So I was pretty fortunate, and they kind of knew what they were doing with online classes because they had done online courses before COVID hit. Where my friends who stayed in the regular school system, it sounded like the classes were really a mess, and it was kind of the same as those last couple months of the year before. They just really struggled, didn't get much instruction. And then now in Oregon, they just came back to school this year, and they were still masked until I think March. So it was a long time. And I mean, I was online for school for all of last year, and then this year here I was online and in person. But I know for me, and especially for my friends who had the masks for so long, and then coming out of the mask, it's just weird to like be back to normal. Like it just feels so weird, and everybody was so isolated for so long. And I feel like it just definitely was going to take some getting used to. But yeah, I think it was definitely very isolating is kind of the big keyword I can use for it. And I know it took a big toll on my mental health to just not be around my peers. And it's definitely been kind of a weird transition getting back to normal, but I'm glad that it's slowly going back to how it was.
Carly?
I wanted to add, although I wasn't a teen during this time, I would like to add those times where there were hurricanes and everything like that. And being a teen and you're stuck at home with your siblings and your parents and everything like that. So dealing with usually when parents come home and then, they have a day, and then depending on how that day went, you might be that target depending on how that day went. So being stuck in the house with parents who are already frustrated and things like that, it's really hard. It was really, really hard because you're dealing with all the emotions of yours, but also your parents on top of that, if they don't have someone to speak to because they are used to going to work and things like that. So it probably was during a tough time for teens and everyone stuck in the house during this time.
Yeah. So do you guys have any mentors that play a role in your guys' lives that help out?
Yeah, I think that adults who aren't your parents, have like a very different angle of impacting you, but I think that it's still like really important. I did a thing over the police department over the summer. It was just like a little summer camp, and I still talk to one of the officers, and she like constantly checks in on me, and she's always like telling me how she believes in me and all this stuff. And it's very different when it's not your parent, because to a certain extent, like parents are almost obligated to say that kind of stuff to you. So I feel like when you hear the perspective of a different adult who like didn't know you prior to you meeting them, they didn't raise you or anything like that, I feel like it definitely impacted me, where I was like, okay, like I can actually do this, like an unbiased opinion. So I definitely think that mentors do, for sure.
I agree. simply because I have about 3 mentors. Just seeing from different angles your parents, you live with them, but they're not going to see all different perspectives of you because they're not around you 24/7. Your friends may see one side, your parents see another side. Definitely in terms of mentors, when it comes to pushing you out of your fears, and sometimes that may require you to go out the state or go somewhere else, your family's going to keep you in, but that mentor is going to tell you to go out because you don't know what's out there and stuff like that. So definitely mentors push you to see life in a different perspective versus what you would see and what your parents would see.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they just like I feel like they come across like obviously they love you and want you to like succeed, but it's kind of like it kind of depends on the situation, but sometimes I could go to like a parent for like advice, be like, I don't know what to do. And then I could go to like my mentor, like a coach, a teacher. I'm very fortunate to have many, but and they could give me like one could give me like soft, like loving advice, like do what's safe for you. And the other one's like, no, like you said, Carly, like to like go out there and like do something, like take a risk, you know? And I feel like it just gives you like that different perspective so that like, you have support either way, but it just is really comforting to have like different, like, again, perspectives.
I agree because even your parents are afraid. A lot of times, our own parents didn't go after what they wanted to do because fear had them stuck, versus your mentor who was at that level of their lives who went after it are going to tell you, I'm not saying forget what your parents said, but I'm also telling you to forget what your parents said and just go out and do what you have to do because you just don't know. And you come out as a different person. Your parents are looking at you like, who are you today? And you're like, no, I'm me. I'm just the side that you didn't see, the side that I didn't know because my mentor saw something that I didn't get to see, that you didn't get to see, because fear really does blind our eyes. It's just like when we get upset, you can't see what's in the pot when it's boiling water because the water is boiling. The same thing when we have fear, you can't see what's past that wall because you won't even peek through the window to see if there's anything out there. So definitely mentors play a huge role, and I'm so grateful for the people that I have.
That's awesome.
I completely agree. And I'd say my biggest mentors I've had are coaches. I was on a climbing team for several years in Oregon. And then here I'm on a track team now. And it's really, really awesome and really motivating to have coaches who care about you and you know that they have your best interest in mind and they really push you and they, recognize your strengths. And I really agree with what you guys were saying about how parents can definitely kind of sugarcoat it. It's like you're their kid, so they are kind of like, yeah, no, you're the best, where coaches are kind of going to give you more of a reality check. So I think it definitely means more to have the different perspectives. Yeah.
So, I mean, knowing that we have age appropriate topics, like treating you guys as kids, treating you as adults in certain situations, there is a fine line depending on what topic we're talking about, like how much do I say at what time and how old. But what you guys are dealing with today is not what I dealt with at your age. It's not what our parents dealt with at your guys' age. So do you feel like parents need to be more upfront? Like, I mean, I feel like you guys are telling me that your mentors are being straight with you, like, no, push it, challenge yourself, go for it. And your parents are kind of holding back a little bit more. And I mean, that's normal. They care about you. They don't want you necessarily ready to leave the nest just yet. But if your parent changed the way they spoke to you and did speak to you a little bit more as an adult, do you feel like you'd be more prepared for life today?
I honestly do think so, especially in like a lot of situations. I feel like adults kind of think that like your age equals your intellect. And so if I bring up an opinion on like a controversial topic, there's a lot of like, oh, well, you'll understand when you're older. And like, that's just what it is. And I'm like, okay, like maybe I don't have the same life experience, but like I still feel really strongly on this subject. And I feel like it can also be really invalidating of your feelings too, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm only 18. I don't know anything apparently. So definitely, yes. And then I also think too, like, I grew up with kind of like stricter parents. So when I was younger, it was a lot of like, you're not allowed to do this. And like, that was it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you can't drink, but if you do get drunk, like you can call me, just don't drive, like things like that. Cause I think sometimes parents think that like their kid can do no wrong and they're never going to make mistakes because their parenting is like so good. So they'll be like, oh, like just don't drink. But then I think it's important to obviously not encourage it, but to still give the background of like, if you happen to be in a situation, this is what you do, like still practice the safety, things like that. So I definitely think had they treated me a little older, maybe when I was a little younger, I think things would be a bit different. So 100%. Yeah.
Good job. Yes.
Can I jump on that? I just, you were speaking to the choir and the pictures in the back. Simply because that is such an important thing. We don't want to beat a dead horse. People are going to make mistakes regardless, but it's the fact of, hey, if you do this, here's plan B. Not, well, I'm going to beat you down until you don't, because then people go do it anyways, and then parents don't find out about it. And it's also the age thing, because it's just like, what you may know at 16 is not what I know at 16. You may have raised me up differently, because and when it comes to being strict and stuff like that, if you don't teach us, the world will. So I never understood that concept. Shout out to my mom. I respect her and everything like that, but we had to learn outside out here. Things like that. It's just, if they took the time to say, hey, you're getting older, let me tell you what's really going to go on versus what you see versus how I've treated you and anything like that, a lot of us would be a lot more prepared.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that me personally, like, I think that my parents have done a good job balancing like the, like the sweet versus like the tough love. But I feel like looking at like everyone, like Carly said, like my 16 isn't somebody else's 16. And I just feel like, honestly, like as a parent, like kind of like a coach, when there's people on the team and that some people, they respond better to like, okay, like maybe let's not do this. And then others, they respond better to like, you can't do that. This is what you need to do. Like, I feel like you can tell, like you've known your kid for a long time, right? So I feel like you could honestly tell, like, how does your child best react by getting the same point across, so like you don't have to like come at it the same just because another parent said it worked for their kid. Like, you have to get the same point across that, yes, I do agree that like kids now need to be more prepared going into the real world, but you need to like find out what works better for your like parent-child relationship.
Can we also speak about judging, how some parents judge their kids? I know this is a controversial topic, but we're here, right? Where how some parents will judge their own kids on the mistakes you make, and which is why a lot more teens are hiding things versus, hey, you made a mistake, how do we move forward? Not, well, you're this and you're that and you're this and you're going to be that. And that's what hinders a lot of people. It goes back to what I said about that fear, because if I make a mistake, my mom's going to judge me, but they didn't go after what they wanted to do because they fear judgment. So it's like a cycle that we keep doing over and over and saying, well, I was doing this at 16, you're going to do that at 16. You can't judge me because I don't know what life was like for you at 16. You don't know what life was like for me at 16. People are going to make their mistakes regardless. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, even through friendships, is that let people live their lives. You can give guidance as you go and everything like that. Of course, you're going to protect and make sure that your child is okay and they're safe. However, as your child gets older, if you're not going to be honest with them, and the world is not going to be honest, because we all know it's a lot of facade, social media and everything like that, this is where we're lacking, because it's just a lot of judgment, I feel.
No, I completely agree. Just to like piggyback off that really quick, like I don't think parents sometimes realize that your reaction to me telling you one thing can like dictate if I tell you anything else like ever again. And I had mentioned earlier, like my mom and I didn't have the best relationship like a few years back. And it was solely just because I would tell her something and then I'd feel like, oh, like she's just judging the way that I went about it instead of telling me how to improve it. And that closed a door where like I did not tell her anything for years. And then eventually we had a conversation and things are much different, much better now. But I don't think they realize like the way you react to one thing that I tell you, I could never tell you anything after that. I feel like I'm being judged, it like puts up a wall, and I feel like that's just never good.
And it shouldn't take years though.
Right.
It shouldn't take years to fix something. Again, it's, if we could jump in and throw in pride in there, throw that one in the mix. A lot of parents have a lot of pride to say, hey, I messed up. I shouldn't have reacted that way. Allows people, it was an emotion. Of course, parents are human. I have an emotion. You told me you jumped off a cliff and landed in bushes. I'm going to be pissed off, but I'm a parent. I'm going to make sure you're okay. But hey, I want you to be able to talk to me. I learned that because as a juvenile officer, I told the youth, they were arguing with another youth, and I said, hey, just get over it. And later on, I realized that youth had said something about his brother that was killed. And later on, I apologized. I'm like, hey, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Because I remember my mom not ever apologizing, and I didn't tell her anything further. And I told that youth, hey, I was wrong for what I said. I shouldn't have spoken. I didn't know. And he took that apology, and for his whole 21 days was a lot better.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, just talking to us like we're equals. And I think, there's definitely 100% a time and a place for parenting, and, you're the child or the parent for sure. But there's also definitely appropriate situations, especially as teenagers, where, it's like, I'm an adult in a year. You can talk to me like an adult about certain matters, and just kind of realizing when your kid is old enough to be having, talking to them like an equal, and just really not judging and not saying, oh, when I was your age, I did this differently. And kind of, I think that definitely has put up walls between me and my parents as well when situations like that have come up. So just having really just a neutral understanding, just being like a safe place. Cause it's like, if I feel like I can go to you with anyone, my parents, mentors, friends, and you're just going to be understanding and just be there for me. And kind of that's your first reaction, even if I did mess up bad and there are consequences to come. If your initial reaction is just the support I need, like that's the person I'm going to go to, not the person who's going to lash out on me and, be like, oh, you messed up so bad. It's like, I know I'll get that later, but, I need the initial support right now.
Absolutely. Great conversation. So we understand that, like, to probably disrupt judgment within our family household, it's to be humans, accept accountability for the things I say and the actions I do. Because as an adult, I have my adult things going on. My world is, up here. So there's a lot of times as parents and adults, we look down at our children and we go, yeah, your situation's not as bad as this. But that's really unfair, because in your world, that's the only thing that you know. And to you, it is bad. It is upsetting. Whatever's going on, it's bad in your world. And I think as adults, we have to slow down and we have to validate that we have two different worlds happening at the same time. And yeah, I could be stressed and I could have had a bad day and a lot of things could be going wrong, but that doesn't take away from you have something going on too. And it's important to have those conversations.
Yeah, there's this quote that I've clung to, and it basically is like, just because the person beside you is in a full body cast doesn't mean that your broken arm doesn't hurt. And I just think that's so true, because just because one person's issues prospectively might be larger than yours doesn't mean that mine don't hurt as bad. And obviously we still have to have grace with our parents and understand that we have a different perspective on things. But I do think so what, the boy didn't like me back, that might not be a big deal to you, but to me, that, you had mentioned, that's my whole world right now. So I think just being empathetic and being I may not understand, but I'm gonna at least try to. I think that's really important too.
Effort matters.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think just showing that you care, even though as a parent, if your kid is oh my gosh, this is bothering me, and you're just kind of in your head, you're kind of okay, and my problem, again, like you said, is so much bigger. Why do I have to care about this? I could just walk away. I just feel the demonstrated interest in your kid's life will just strengthen your relationship so much. Literally just demonstrated interest, just showing that you're interested in what's happening will make them want to talk to you more. Because if you're I'm really sorry that that's happening to you, do you want to tell me more about it? I'd be well, yeah, because this is bothering me a lot and I want to talk about it. But if you're just kind of okay. But I'd be like, okay, it clearly doesn't matter. I'm never going to talk to you about this again. And then they're like, wait, what's happening? You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like that cycle. Like you just want to like show interest in each other. Like I want to be like interested in what's happening with my mom, and she wants to be interested in what's happening with me, which just totally strengthens the relationship. And I just feel like it makes it so much easier to come to her with bigger things because I come to her with smaller things too. So I feel like that helps a lot.
Yeah, I feel like just really validating our feelings, even if you can. And I feel like it applies with everyone. Like I have a brother who's 3 years younger than me, and he has all sorts of girl drama. And it's easy to be like, you're 14, like, what girl drama, big deal. But it's like, I do remember 3 years ago when I had boy drama, and that was the end of the world to me, and I was having meltdowns over it. And it's like your feelings are just as big. It's like just because you're younger doesn't mean your feelings aren't as valid. Like everybody has the same feelings. So I think that that's really important to remember.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to touch on two things. Just to feelings don't have an age. So, you may be 45 and feel like, well, this relationship and your whole life is over. And someone may be 14 and they feel like it's over. Feelings don't have an age. And I feel like in a way that parents can disrupt the judgment cycles in a way of stop with the amnesia complex. Is that a thing? I don't think that is. Where people, not just even parents, people seem to forget when they were there. And it doesn't even matter if it's the same situation. It's just, didn't you forget when you couldn't do this and do that and your parent told you this? How can you forget when you were in the same thing? Showing grace, everyone doesn't know what grace is. Everyone doesn't show grace. It's like someone saying, you're always having problems in your life, but they're also not telling you the problems in their lives. And just showing grace and being patient and not quick to judging others is remember when you were stuck too. And I was there for you. Or I didn't say something mean like get over it and move on, stop talking about it. Or why are you always bringing it up? I was there for you, so be there for me.
Absolutely. There's a difference between being talked to and talked at. And I'm sure you've experienced both from all adults in your life. It's not very fun being talked at. Include me in the conversation and validate that I'm a part of this conversation, and you're just not telling me that this is the way it is, right? Yeah. So let's spin the table a little bit and let's move to social media. Social media, always, a topic, and phones are always in your guys' hands. So we can go the battle back and forth of, put your phone down. It's adults trying to control the situation, but you guys having a little bit more knowledge, share some of the things that does happen in social media. Like at your age, are you getting text messages or hit up in app messaging by people you don't know? Are they asking you to do stuff for you? Are they sending you pictures? What does that look like? What does it feel like to get those kinds of messages?
Yeah, definitely. And not even just me, but just like the people around me. Like a lot of my friends will be like, oh, like, look at what this guy said in like my Instagram DMs. And like there are like things in place. Like on Instagram, you have to like approve the message before like they receive it to you, which stuff like that is good. But for sure, like there's definitely things that I'm like, oh, like I didn't ask for this. Like I'm gonna unadd you on Snapchat now because I didn't want that. Like definitely. I think that it's something that could be monitored, even if it is just through like a conversation. Because I have friends who will like answer these people, and it's just solely because they've never had a conversation of like, this could be dangerous. So I'm not saying like parents need to like have every password to every app that you have and like stalk your entire phone, but something as small as just a conversation of like, this can be really dangerous, I feel like can make a huge difference in the way that we react to the advances that like we didn't necessarily ask for.
I like 100% like agree with every single thing you said, especially with the last part. Like I feel like most parents are kind of just like, what's his password? You can't have this, you can't get this app because I said so. Because I said so. Like your kids gonna be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go, I don't know, I've seen people that have separate phones just for social media or do it on their computer. like that's not like a valid reason. Like we said before, like your kids are at the age where like they can know. Like it's okay to know. Like I want to know the reason. Because I said so is not like you can tell me. Like I'll take it in, I'll understand. Like literally just tell me, you know? And so like I feel like just telling your kids like this is why this is dangerous. Now me, I am like, "Hey, best friend, don't do that. That's dangerous and this is why." And she's like, "Oh, so I shouldn't reply to this person who wants to like do this?" And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm just saying just like little things like that, just making your kid aware instead of just having that like authority because I said so is just so important. And I feel like nowadays, like the whole like put your phone down, like we communicate with people like that. Like social media is like you might just think we're just like scrolling for like days and hours and whatever. And I don't know, some people might be, but like that's how you talk to your friends. So it's being like stop talking to your friends right now. You know, like I'm in a conversation and it's just like little things like that is just like you need to like be on the same level when you kind of like give reasons like that so that they can understand and like help other friends whose parents might not tell them the same thing.
So we know that because I said so doesn't work. But I know as a kid, I was like, my mom's telling me something like, you don't know. You don't like, sure. Okay. It's like, it's going to be scary or there's going to be a bad guy. Like maybe like what's the words? What's the conversation look like? How does that parent get through to you to make you understand that it is really a scary situation?
Oh, you could go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I feel like it really does come down to how you approach it. And I feel like with a lot of parents, and I've had good conversations and bad conversations with my parents with it, it's just how they approach it. So if they come at you with kind of it's like it's your fault, like they kind of attack you, that's when I feel like kids really like back into a corner and aren't going to listen. But if you make it more of a like, this isn't a you thing, this isn't your fault, like it's not your fault, your people are, sending you unsolicited things and reaching out to you randomly, it's like that's completely out of your control. It's how you react to it. And I think just I personally am somebody who, like, if I'm not going to take my parents' word for something, if they have like statistics, I'll be like, okay, like I can understand that. So I think something that would have really, like, with this whole issue of human trafficking, just seeing the statistics and like, wow, that is really going on, and you're really not aware of it because it is just so, it's just going on behind closed doors. So just being able to see like, oh, wow, okay, that really is a reality. That's something that really opened my eyes personally. So I think just coming at, again, like an equal approach, talking to your kid like an equal, not attacking them, and just being reasonable, giving them reasons, giving them facts, giving them, not just saying because I said so or I've heard this, like just being, actually bringing a good argument to the table that's going to convince your kid and show them that it's serious.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have 3 points. That's why I wanted to go last. Well, there's a huge difference between a parent versus a provider. I mean, that's a topic for a different day, but a loving parent is going to take that time to tell you, hey, maybe you should watch out. A providing parent doesn't really have the time, if they're working how many hours, to tell you, okay, this is what's going on, because most of the time they don't even know, because they don't have the time for themselves to even inform you on what's going on. Second, social media plays on emotions, like you said earlier. When there's a message that's come through, when you're lonely and you don't have anything else going on for yourself, like preoccupying your time or anything like that, someone messages to you like, okay, yeah, I'm going to give that a chance and I'm going to go for it. For example, a guy called me off of Facebook Messenger to tell me he was an entrepreneur for a bakery. I happened to do private investigations for a couple of times, so I did my research. That was a lie. But if I didn't know any better, and if I was a person who was like, oh, I'm so alone and I need someone, especially during these times, that leaves you wide open to a Tinder swindler. And for people who don't know what a Tinder swindler is a person who uses others to get his satisfaction or her satisfaction off of people's emotions, basically. And lastly, It goes back to the teach me so the world won't have to teach me. It's, for example, I'm gonna speak in terms of females because we're all female here. When parents are saying say no to boys, no, stay away. But you're not telling me why. You're not telling me what's gonna happen if I do this, if X, Y, and Z and everything like that. Then the end result is that, and you're like, I thought you knew better. How did I know better? No one taught me anything. Social media taught me what I know, and social media only taught me the good side of it. Like you see MTV and Teen Mom, they're living luxury for the short time they're going through what they're going through, but you see these nice lives. How am I supposed to know exactly what's really going on if you don't have the time to tell me, or you're trying to protect your emotions so you sugarcoat it? And if my emotions are all out of whack and I'm just like, well, bring it on, how do we know what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you were saying about like getting attention because you feel like you're not getting it from other places. Because I know, like, I've seen a lot of the times where girls will, like, and guys too, will respond to these messages and things because it's an insecurity that they have. And then the person knows, like, if I give her this X amount of attention, then she'll give me what I want back. So I think almost if we can get to the like root of teaching women, especially, that your worth doesn't come from how many guys want you, then I think that the difference in like how we would be reacting to things is really different. And then also, Carly, what you were saying too about like parents telling like, oh, like say the guy, like tell the guy no. But that's not enough, because even in society, we'll see with victims like, oh, well, you shouldn't have worn that shirt, or you shouldn't have done this and X, Y, and Z. And it's like an implication that it's your fault. So if we can also like kind of get away from like, okay, tell the guy no, but if he doesn't listen, this is what you do, or this is a plan B, or maybe no's not working, so try this, like things like that. So I completely agree with everything that you were saying.
Or telling young boys abuse just because she's pretty or she says things like that and you have a mommy wound doesn't mean you should be getting abused just because who's going to believe you, since you're a man and men don't get to cry. I'm going to abuse your emotions because I'm a female and I know you have a wound because your mom doesn't have time for you because she's working all the time. So I'm going to take advantage of you. Things like that. If we can teach both genders the worth and everything like that, then we can really get to that point. But that also takes that parent to know their worth, to teach that kid their worth. Because most of the time you're not going to know about what is self-worth until something happens to your life in high school, or you get to college where most people do the whole transformation thing. I'm going to cut my hair. I'm going to do all of that stuff like that. You really won't know because most parents won't even be honest with themselves to teach you about what's really going on. So you're left with social media to figure it out, and they lie, and you have the different people who in Miss Americas and things like that. You have people committing suicide because we thought they knew their worth, but what is worth really if you don't go through something, or if you don't have a parent to teach you, which leaves traffickers are just like, this is my time to shine.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we just all want to be loved, right? We just want people to like us, hang out with us. So when we're feeling those lonely thoughts and somebody pops in and is like, hey, like, I want to like you. I think you're great. Why would we think they're lying to us, right? Because we wouldn't do something like that to somebody else. So it's hard. I mean, even for adults today, like it is hard for us to know, is somebody love bombing me? And love bombing is, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, like you're great. Like just totally hitting those dopamine hits over and over again. Well, of course I want to feel like that. Like, but it's very short-lived, so we have to be able to notice those red flags. Like, we don't have to necessarily be mean to everybody that is kind, because, kind is not a bad thing, but paying attention to repetitive like triggers or, red flags that just says like, something's a little bit off and I need to step back. Making sure that you're listening to that gut, that instinct, and that's why we have these conversations, because we teach kids to trust themselves and their instinct, because we don't know who we can trust out there, but we can't stop being who we are, right? That doesn't
But that
work.
goes to that, Nicole, it goes to, you only know red flags when you know who you are, when you know what makes you tick or not. That's the only way you know if that's a red flag. If you never knew that you didn't like someone yelling at you, how are you supposed to know? Am I supposed to be upset? What emotion do I show here? Because I don't know, what am I supposed to show? And again, honesty is the best policy. If we can get to a point of being honest with who we are and what we go through and stuff like that, parents can best help their teens, and teens can help the people younger and things like that. But This is why social media is at the all-time high, because of the lies. No one wants to be honest anymore and say that, hey, at 25, I'm not married with a house and kids and a dog running around, because that's just not my life right now. That's not what I want to do right now. But I'm honest with that. I'm not going to go rogue trying to show you that it's something else. But if we can get honesty and stuff like that, we can teach people what to do. Parents can teach their kids a lot better, but parents have to be honest themselves. And a lot of times that's a hard topic to talk about because, pride gets in the way, and that's a different topic for a different day. That's all for today.
Yeah, I feel like what you said about like teaching your kids so that the world doesn't have to teach their kids, I feel like that's really important because I feel like a lot of the time parents, like we said, sugarcoating, like they don't want to be the bad guy. Like obviously nobody wants to be the bad guy, but like eventually like your kid's gonna have to learn, and it's either gonna come from you, who is their parent, who hopefully, your child knows how much you love them. And, you always say, oh, it's because I love you. But like at the end of the day, it is. And if you just like rip off the Band-Aid and like let them know so that they don't go out into the world like, oh, like my parents said everything's going to be fine. And then boom, they get hit with something, like it's going to hurt so much more because they're going to be like, why didn't you tell me this was going to happen? Rather than them coming and be like, it happened. Like you told me, like, what do I do? And they're like, okay, now here's what you do. You know what I'm saying? So like, I just like wanted to like just add on to that because I feel like it's so important for like, it's like hard to hear, but like sometimes parents, like you have to be the bad guy because it's going to help them. Like sometimes being the bad guy will help them, and you can do it in, again, like a way that your child will understand and process that. So I feel like that was really, really good.
Can I add to that? I
Yes.
know I know we're not talking about codependency today, but if we that is a huge thing right there. When you take a child that is spoiled versus a child that is not spoiled, the child that is not spoiled is a lot more prepared than the child that is spoiled because the parent wanted to give them everything that they lack. A lot of times spoiled children hit the ground a lot harder than those whose feet were closer to the ground because our parents kind of let us walk versus those parents who are like, oh, everything's going to be okay. When that parent gets older and no one else is there to keep you afloat and stuff like that, life is really hard. Life is really hard.
Simone, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all that. I think it's just, and it's also important to remember that as a parent, like you can teach them these lessons in a safe way and in a safe environment where you cannot guarantee that once they're out in the real world. So, it is 100% better to do it in that environment, in my opinion. And that's just your kid is gonna be confident going off into the world. They're gonna feel prepared. They're just gonna be set, like it's so hard going off on your own in so many ways. So, the easier you can make that for them, the better. Even if it does take some, hard conversations and some hard lessons, like I think it's so worth it.
Absolutely. It's nice to have the safety net while you're at home learning those things versus being thousands of miles away. So Carly, you touched on something about, how did you say it? Okay, I can't think of how you said it, but it was good. I'll write notes next time. But we are at about 10 minutes left to our hour and stuff. And I did want to touch on one last question that I feel like will take up that last part. And it's the things that you know about human trafficking today and what you've learned by being with Paving the Way and what you've learned from your parents or your own research. What do you want other 11 to 18 adults, every age in between, like what do you want them to know about human trafficking, and what's the actions that you want them to take from this call?
I would probably say that I feel like when we look at a really insurmountable issue like human trafficking, we get kind of wrapped up in the numbers and we're like, oh, like I'm just one person, like I'm only 18, like realistically, what can I do? Like it's just such a widespread issue. But I feel like if people know that your one voice, if everybody adds up their one voice, like it can make the biggest change ever. So I think just realize like you wouldn't have been given a voice if you didn't have an intent to use it. So like speak out about what you feel like you're passionate about, and even with just human trafficking, like one conversation can completely save someone's life. It can completely prevent something. So you don't have to be like volunteering every single day or like donating all this money, things like that. Like literally just sparking up uncomfortable conversations, calling your friends out when they say something like a joke that you're like, okay, that's not funny. Like those little things, all of those little things can add up to a really big picture and make a really big change. So definitely just don't underestimate the power that you have in like stopping widespread issues, because you can really do a lot.
Yeah, I would say kind of like just like staying like alert and realizing that like human trafficking, it's like when you think about it, you're like, oh, it could never happen to me, or it could never happen to like the people in my community. But just like realizing that like it is a real thing and it does happen a lot. That's why we're talking about it. That's why we have to raise awareness, because people don't know just how real and how like relevant this is. And I feel like just making like the people in your community more like alert so that they can understand like the signs, and that they can like you can protect them, like informing them, obviously keeping in mind like boundaries and things like that. But just like making the people around you more aware, again, like Jennifer said, like using that voice that you have, and really just like helping your community stay like on top of it, because it does happen. And I think a lot of people just like completely overlook it, because again, it can't happen to me. Like a lot of people would say that. I'm sure that's what a lot of people said about like COVID, like, oh, I'd never get COVID. But a lot of people got COVID. I got COVID. I thought the same thing. I was like, there's no way it's going to happen to me. And it did. And I was like, you kidding? Like, this is real. But I feel like just like making people aware, again, keeping in mind boundaries is very important.
Absolutely. Carly, what would you want the people to know about human trafficking?
Oh, I was gonna let
Okay, you want to go last. Simone, what about you?
Well, I think the thing that really hit me the most and got me so interested in the issue in the first place is just that it can happen to anyone and that it can start out so harmless. I read, like, my first really introduction to it was I read this book called In Our Backyard. My mom gave it to me once she decided I was old enough to read it. She said it was really hard for her to read, and it was a really emotional book, and it had just a lot of different stories about different human trafficking situations. But the first chapter was about this girl who, it started out like she literally could have been me or any of my friends, coming from a very loving household, had, everything she needed, just regular middle class, had the money to spend to get the things she wanted. Like, she just came from a very happy, supporting family. And it just started with her, she just wanted to wear this like revealing shirt, and her mom made her return it, that she bought it at the mall with her friend. And then this new friend, who ended up being like a plant from a pimp, she started was like, oh, I can, buy you these other things and you can just wear them at school. And it just started out so harmless, of this like just new friend, just, giving her these super innocent things like clothes to wear at school, because it was the thing she wants to wear. And, it was an easy thing. It was like, oh, my parents, what do they know? It's just a shirt, big deal. And it ended up turning into her getting roped into this entire human trafficking circle. And she ended up running away with them and this boyfriend, and ended up in Las Vegas being pimped out. Like, it just went from 0 to 100 so fast. And I think it's really important for everybody to realize that something so innocent can turn ugly so quickly, and you're in too deep before you can get out of it. So I think just educating on that is so important.
Absolutely.
I know you can't scare people into learning and wanting to know more about human trafficking. However, it's like when we're taught about kidnapping, stay away from strangers, don't walk up to the car and everything like that. I found that you kind of have to do the same thing when it comes to people, and informing them in the way you could say, okay, well, Florida's ranked number 3, but they're like, oh, okay, well, that's not me. As if they don't live in Florida either. But just showing them like, hey, this could happen in this area. Here are the signs of these different things to look out for. It's not how you think it is. It's not it could be the male person who's dropping it off is just trying to look through the door who's in there and things like that. It's close, and helping people understand it's not the way social media and TV makes it look. It's a lot more real and close by than you think it is what I found helpful, because I had my past roommates who decided they wanted to go out to the club, and there was no pepper spray, it was nothing on them or anything like that. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make sure you take this mace with you just to make sure, and then I know we're gonna be okay. You don't know. You're not invincible. As much as you like to think that you are, we're not. And that goes for men too, because there's labor trafficking and stuff like that. So that's not saying that it can't happen to you and things like that, but helping people understand how real it is what really drives the message home.
Yeah, it's not the white van. It's not the situation for the most part where they're going to abduct you and you never come home. Like the trafficking situations, you get to come home in most places, at least with the scenarios that we're talking about right now. There's many different colors of human trafficking. But in these situations and, with teenagers, we're talking about individuals that are either getting groomed at school or getting groomed by maybe a family member, the neighbor, friend of a friend, and this grooming stage is not forceful. It's not abusive. It's caring. It's loving. It's giving you attention. It's making you see that whatever's happening in your life, like I got the greener pasture over here. Come over here. Come check it out. That's what that introduction to it looks like. And we should all know, as children, teenagers, adults know better. And if adults are asking us to do things for them, or if they're telling us to keep secrets, or if they're touching us or pushing our boundaries where we know that they should not be, it is acceptable of us to say no, and that's not okay. It doesn't matter if we were taught to respect our elders. If our elders are not being respectful of us, it is okay for you guys to stand up and say, no more. This is enough. So I empower all of you that are out there watching this today. You're worth more than that. And you do not have to do uncomfortable things. And there are going to be people that have your back and will, be there for you and listen, whether you don't feel like that's at home. Find anybody that's going to be willing to listen. Because once you get on that other side of things, it becomes very, very difficult to get back. And unfortunately, those that get into the industry, they suffer with that trauma and it stays with them for the rest of their lives. So by having these conversations, by being candid, by being open, and providing safe spaces for the people that we love, we have the ability to prevent that from happening, because we know that we're not going to be able to arrest them all. We're not going to be able to find them all. They're good at what they do. So stick up for your friends. Make sure that you're a good friend. Even if you're not friends with somebody, if you're at school and you see somebody that just seems off that day, be there for them. You're a good person. If somebody is going to approach somebody that's having a hard time, let it be you, because you know that you're going to take care of that person. We all need somebody to stand up for us sometimes. So I appreciate every single one of you for being here tonight. You guys are going to do amazing things. And I hope that your friends and your family and everybody that's out there got something from this call tonight and goes home and put it to action. So if you see something, do something. Don't just let it happen. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Good night.